I'm Louise Wyman. I'm the design lead for the West Midlands Combined Authority, and I'm on secondment to the Combined Authority from Homes England. So I've got colleagues who I'll introduce you to on the panel, and I'm looking forward to a really lively and interesting discussion on affordable housing. So I'll do three things to get things rolling: introduce you to the panel, do a sort of broad welcome to the topic and the themes of the topic, and then set out some challenges and some questions that I have, and then we're going to Slido in the way that we did before the lunch break. So really welcome questions from all of you as well. Jackie Jacob, she is a affordable housing director at Homes England, many years of experience in the sector and a great colleague to work with. On Jackie's left is Ben Denton, Managing Director of Legal and General Affordable Homes. Many of you will know Ben from the different roles he's played in the housing and regeneration sector, and a really important role there with one of the major funds in the UK, L&G. Next to Ben is Joe Reeves, Executive Director, Strategy and Growth at Midland Heart, one of the largest affordable housing providers in this region, a real expert on the West Midlands as a whole, West and East Midlands actually, as we were discussing last night. And then last but by no means least, Professor Jackie Dunn. She's a Deputy Vice Chair, have I got that right? Vice Chancellor, the University of Wolverhampton, and also sits on the LEP, the Black Country LEP, so an expert on education, skills, and all things Black Country. So that is our panel. I'm really delighted to have them with us. So just to sort of set the scenes a bit in terms of the topic, what we want to sort of dig into and feel free to eat and drink and the things that you may be doing anyway. I know you'll be messaging and catching up on stuff from home, but we want to really focus on the challenges of delivering affordable housing. We all know that this country is desperately short and constantly faces a housing crisis, and the affordable housing crisis is significant. So I'm going to be asking the panelists about the challenges that they see and how they're addressing them. Crucially as well, how do you get great communities, well-designed places, and the quality piece at the same time as the quantity? So we'll have questions on that. And then because we've got some real funding and finance experts here, how do we line up the funding regimes, the potential that we heard about in the previous sessions, that the public and private sector, when working in partnership, what can that give us, particularly with a keen focus on affordable housing? So we have some pre-prepared questions, which the panel have seen. So I'm actually going to start with Joe. We'll jump around a bit on the questions, and then we'll go to Slido. So 10, 15 minutes of scripted questions now that we've been thinking about and discussing with each other in the run-up to this session. So Joe, to get the ball rolling, if you'd each like to say a little bit about kind of who you are beyond the introduction I've given, and then could you help us define the term affordable housing, what it means to you in the way you practice?
Okay, thanks. And thanks for that really easy question to start off with. I think effectively defining affordability is like trying to grasp a slippery eel. There is no real definition. So my name's Joe Reeves. I'm the Exec Director of Strategy and Growth at Midland Heart. I'm responsible for our development programme and our government relations and our strategic business planning. So as I say, it's a really difficult construct. I mean, affordability is relative. It's predicated on the ratio of cost of the housing vis-a-vis individuals or households' income, but that changes. Income changes, cost pressures, cost spending, cost habits all change, and therefore that all contributes towards the impact of affordability and the choices available. So obviously when we talk about affordable housing as a housing association, you'd expect this. We use that expression for lower household income groups, and we invest our resources in products which cater towards that group, but increasingly so within the Midlands. As a result of house price inflation, we're starting to see average house prices is also targeted within that income group as well. So two principal ways that we look at affordability, set by a government regulatory framework in terms of rent and shared ownership, which are deemed subsidised with grant that we have with Homes England. But effectively, we have social rent and affordable rent definitions, which tends to roughly equate to around 60 to 70% of market rent. And that roughly equates, as I say, on average, to about a third of someone's household income. We also look at shared ownership. So not only is it about rented products, it's also about low-cost home ownership. So looking at those income multiples where you can purchase a proportion of the house, rent on the rest of the share, and then have the ability to purchase the rest of your property over time through staircasing. But I think just as importantly, it's right to say that housing associations aren't just providers of affordable housing, they're providers of accessible housing. And I think accessibility is just as important as affordability. So what I mean by that is having the ability to get your foot on the housing ladder is really important. But those that would want to go into the private rented sector but might be barred as a result of benefits issues, hefty deposits that you might have to want in the first place, or the threat of very short-term tenancies, suitable housing for older persons that might wish to downsize and actually move into something which is more suitable from a care perspective. So actually, I think affordability and accessibility are really important. And when we start thinking about the scale of the problem, obviously we've seen through the Strategic Economic Plan of the Combined Authority and other plans, the concept around 215,000, or other plans which say 250. That is absolutely right. Temporary accommodation in this region is around 3,000. There is a hidden homelessness as well as a visible homelessness that we all see. So from our perspective, alongside the economic infrastructure, which is going to enable us to, with migration domestically, to have population growth in this area, it's also going to be vitally important that we continue to look at affordable housing in that regard.
That is brilliant, Joe. Thank you. And what a broad introduction, actually. It shows you the depth and range of the topic, really. Jackie, I'm going to come across to you now. Jackie Jacob, actually. We've got two Jackies. So Jackie J. Yeah, we've worked together for a while. But I'm really interested, Jackie, in the work that you've been doing around that sort of broad picture for affordable housing, the importance of strategic partnerships, how as a government agency, with the funding that you need to bring alongside partners such as Midland Heart, how do you approach that, and what does affordable housing mean to you, and how do you address it?
Okay, so I'm Jackie Jacob, Director of Affordable Housing Grant in a national role for Homes England. So we deal with grant funding of affordable homes across England, outside London, and work very closely with colleagues in the Midlands office. So Carl, he's in the room. Hi, Carl. We work very closely, and I work closely with them to make sure that we're investing grant with our partners. So in terms of what we're doing, so part of my role is engaging with government, making the case for grant. We're currently in a spending review from 2016 to 21. We're right in the middle of a grant programme, which is significant. If you look back to 2015, we were actually potentially contemplating, in people in the room, a world without grant for affordable housing going forward. So it was extremely positive that we landed a settlement of £5 billion outside London to deliver affordable homes exactly in the context that Joe set out. Affordable housing for us is 4 set products that are defined in the MPPF. And we often have turbulence around why aren't we more creative, why aren't we more flexible, why don't we go for different forms? Actually, we find that in the end, when the market thinks about it, it's really important that everyone understands what is being grant funded, that lenders understand what grant is being used for, and that the shared ownership is on a standard model. And there's arguments for and against that, but actually we find sticking to that actually does help tremendously as people go out into the market to fund. So we're right in the middle of this programme, looking to prove the concept to government. Really our ambition at the moment is to say longer term funding certainty actually gets you into a space where you can get more. So we're not just talking about affordable housing, we're talking about a mix. And I don't know if we're touching on the quantum that's needed.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes, I can put that. So government has set out that by the mid-2020s, there really need to be seeing new supply at the volumes of around 300,000 new build homes across England. And traditionally, the sector, the housing association and local authority partners, as providers, tend to go out there and deliver a third of supply. That's affordable homes and extra, the over on top of that. So you'd be looking really at 100,000 a year. So I'd say that's the kind of quantum that we'd be looking for, the blend of the sector from local authorities, registered providers and commercial entrants to our programme to be delivering. It's not all affordable. Some of that will be the market sale, etc., private rented sector provision that some partners are getting into. But it is a substantial step change. I think the sector's put forward that, sort of they've got capacity for about 80,000 a year within that. But you can see how the extra 20,000 may be coming from other forms of housing. So Strategic partnerships is a sort of an experiment we've set about with quite substantial amounts of government grant funding from in this programme, just about £1.8 billion for about 40,000 affordable homes that actually will be delivered in the next 2 to 3 years. A step change in supply from those strategic partners, but alongside that was a compelling argument for ministers that actually, if you think of that number and double it, you will get supply really ramping up, because with long-term delivery certainty, long-term grant funding certainty, you can get an awful lot more bang for your buck if you're looking at sites getting developed out, land-led development, and associations using their capacity to the benefit of a wide range of supply products.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jackie. I want to build on that point, Ben, with you, please. So we're hearing, the quantum that's needed, the creativity actually that you're seeing from both Homes England and a provider. In your experience and your kind of economic background is what I'm thinking of. How big is the affordable housing market, and how do you see LNG's role in that, and your role?
Yeah, so LNG. So hopefully most of you in the room might know about LNG. We're a large UK institution. Traditionally, have been in the insurance and pensions marketplace, and but LNG also invests its balance sheet capacity into areas where there is societal benefit, so regeneration, carbon neutral energy, and housing, because there's not enough funding in the housing marketplace. So in our business as an affordable housing provider is to invest society's hard-earned pension fund money into delivering affordable housing that delivers a societal benefit. So we're creating that virtuous circle. I think I'm still allowed to say we're still a startup. We're in our sort of first and a bit year of operation, but our business plan was to deliver about 3,000 affordable homes a year, which is, I guess it's about sort of 6 in the current market, is about sort of between 6 and 7% of the UK market. So I guess our estimation is if 50,000 affordable homes got delivered last year, it's about 10 billion pounds worth of investment. As the market goes to 100 billion, as 100,000 homes, that could be 20 billion pounds worth of investment in total, of which some has to be subsidy. The subsidy has to come from somewhere to be able to create discounted market products, and the balance has to come from all players in the sector. So the challenge absolutely is how does I think the exciting challenge is how the affordable housing sector takes centre ground in delivering government's policies, which are to get to deliver 100,000 or more affordable homes a year, to be able to fill that gap, so that from a societal perspective the nation is delivering 300,000 homes a year.
Brilliant, thank you. We're really building a picture here. Jackie, I wanted to come to you because we're hearing about the kind of national, regional players, but in the context, particularly I'm thinking with your LEP hat on, I guess, and your education and skills background, is this an issue for the region, and how do we address that issue in your mind?
Okay, yeah, so I'm Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University of Wolverhampton, and I'm also Chair, I'm on the Black Country LEP, but also Chair of the Employment and Skills Board for the Black Country LEP. Somebody did ask me, I think it was Louise asked me earlier, if I was a professor of housing or construction, and I unfortunately had to say no. So unlike my colleagues here who are specialists, I come at this from a different angle. I'm a professor of lifelong learning and skills, and originally was a linguist, so this should be interesting, shouldn't it? So the Black Country, like the rest of the wider West Midlands, needs more affordable housing. That is a priority. It's something that the LEP and the Combined Authority are looking at. Alongside that need for affordable housing, the area also has a particular issue around brownfield sites. So, yeah, a particular issue around brownfield sites where the Black Country has 550 brownfield sites, and there is an issue about how do you start to unlock some of those sites for development, including housing. So I think I just wanted to talk very briefly about a really good example of what happens when the interests of a university, of the LEP, of the local authority, the combined authority and the industrial partners come together really neatly in this space. And what we've been doing in the centre of Wolverhampton is creating the Springfield campus, which is a national centre for construction excellence. It was a 12-acre brownfield site, been derelict for 25 plus years, previously a brewery. And that site is now being developed in a number of ways to address many of the challenges that we're seeing in the construction industry. And that does include a National Brownfield Institute that we're currently working on with the Combined Authority, industrial partners, private sector, etc. So I guess all of this is about what skills do you need for the construction industry behind that kind of need for housing, and what are the practical applications of research that we can bring into play in order to help the construction industry move forward, whether that's about modern methods of construction, off-site, brownfield, digital, whatever it might be. It's about bringing stakeholders together to say what is that wider approach and how are we going to prepare and support the industry to deliver some of this agenda.
Brilliant, thank you. And those are great introductions too to the sort of range of work that you're involved in. Thank you. Joe, I wanted to sort of dig in to some of the points that you raised there, because I know we were talking last night, 33,000 homes, is that right, in your programme, which is fantastic for this region, under management. Could you give us a bit of insight into the specific challenges you face? And also, I'd like to hear about the potential you see in your relationship with Homes England, having listened to what Jackie Jacob said.
Yeah, okay. So Midland Heart, we've got a strategic plan to build around 3,000 properties over the next 5 years. And on top of that, we're also participating in the government's voluntary right to buy programme, where properties will be sold to those that wish to purchase them. And that probably means that we'll probably build a further 300 homes over this 5-year period as well. The way that we'll do that, some of that will be Section 106. Obviously, there are still opportunities made available by mainstream developers through their planning consents. Some of it will be land-led, but predominantly, as part of our business plan, we have something called growth and partnerships. And partnerships is going to be the most important aspect of the way that we deliver. We've got 2 principal partnerships, one with Countryside and one with Partner Construction. And effectively, it's a play on the design, build, finance, operate, where effectively our partners will source, design and build, and we will acquire, finance and operate ourselves. So working in that long-term partnership, what it means is that we have the ability, through our commissioning abilities, through our funding arrangements, to be able to source mixed tenure developments where we'll principally be delivering affordable and social housing as well as shared ownership. So that's going to be really important, I think, obviously for the Midlands, that we have that ability to increase economic activity. But the challenges are going to be around sourcing land, supply chains, and obviously certainty. Economic and political certainty is going to be absolutely critical. Development appraisals are long-term in nature. They need to have very robust assumptions applied to them, and therefore, effectively, we need to ensure that they are as certain as possible. Now, clearly, one of the ways that we have certainty is through the subsidy that we are made available to us through Homes England, and we work very closely with Homes England. We do not have a strategic partnership with Homes England, but I think it's very safe to say that we strategically partner with Homes England. We work with under the guise of continuous market engagement. We find that is flexible for us and enables us to work closely with Homes England around individual transactions, where we can look at the flexibility enshrined within the rules. We've also actually got something called CME Plus, so effectively it's bearing some of the hallmarks of a strategic partnership, but not quite the same thing. So effectively, we see out of that 3,000, we've already got a pipeline in place for around 2,200, and we will continue to work in that partnership so we can drive long-term value and therefore help to actually meet some of those challenges of delivering that housing.
Fantastic, thank you. And Jackie Jacob, I'm going to come back to you. Particularly, there's been a lot in the press over the last year or so, I'd say, around the work you and other colleagues have led on strategic partnerships and that kind of different way in which Homes England is engaging with the market and the diverse players within the market. Would you like to say a bit more about kind of your engagement, partnership plans, how you address some of the points that just came up there. Yeah.
So I think we're quite clear in Homes England that we want to partner and make sure that the plans and the strategic ambition of partners is realisable beyond the grant. But actually what we spotted with the grant funded programme and the grant we had available was the opportunity to start to frame the discussion. So sort of about a year, 15 months ago, we started that discussion through the NHF and with the not-for-profit housing associations to say, what is it that we can do with the grant and how can we be more flexible? And actually we have gone on then to push that out in a CME plus type way as well, so that it can be accessed on a scheme by scheme basis. But what is it that we can do differently with our grant? But also get a step change in our engagement with partners to allow the governance and framework to come together and sit around a table and talk about wider ambitions. So we have, yes, a grant agreement and a strategic partnership around affordable housing grant, but we also are engaging regularly with partners to identify what it is they want to do, what is it their ambition to do, and how can we set about using other Homes England tools and sort of interventions to actually get the step change in supply as well. So there's other financial facilities we have around lending. Could we go into joint ventures, equity positions with an organisation, or indeed how we use our land, how we go in. And we're very much pushing the boundaries beyond the grant, although we needed to have that at the core of the strategic partnerships. It does mean that we are starting again to look much longer term. And I think that's where government spending review periods and the control, the fiscal control, butts up against the ambitions. And that's why we're using the sort of information we're gleaning on the Strategic Partnerships grant to set out that what you can do over 10 years rather than 5 or 3, which tends to be a standard spending review.
That's brilliant, thank you. And hearing about that, it's really more of a long-term strategic approach, isn't it, that the agency are taking, which is fantastic. So, Ben, I'm going to come back to you to just get a bit more insight to yours is, as you said, a relatively new business. So a startup within a very well-established, well-known brand. Can we just hear a bit of your insights, perhaps into those, what's it like starting up a business like that within L&G? What are the challenges? What have you heard from the people across the panel that you want to engage with?
Yeah, I mean, it's yes, it's there were 4 people in the business when in December, and there are about 33 now. There's another 16 that we need to bring in by the end of the calendar year. So obviously, bringing together people and culture is really, really important. Whilst we sit within L&G, the only thing we get from L&G is lots and lots of policies and procedures, which are really all relevant to what we need to do, and their HR system. But everything else is starting from scratch. So it really is thinking from scratch. So I think the exciting opportunity, and the brief also is 3,000 homes a year, but designing and executing an excellent customer service platform. So in a digital world, what would you do in designing a customer service, a frictionless customer service platform that works for the customer? And I think the exciting bit there is, we think that's necessary and absolutely sensible for a business in this space setting up today. But many of the people that we're collaborating with who are in the sector are really excited to want to borrow some of that learning or collaborate in that learning. And then if there's useful stuff that they can then use for their housing management platforms and their partners, then that's really positive. So we went out and got to be a good affordable housing partner, you've got to be a really, really good manager. So we went out to the market and selected, it was quite a sort of big exercise. We had about 130 organisations that responded, about 40 that tendered. We picked the best 20 from a quality perspective and then actually appointed the best 12 in that process. So the cost of the service was the final point at the end of the day. Up until that point, everything was all about quality and a commitment to delivering great quality customer service. So what's it like? I mean, to build a business that's sort of, with an ambition to have sort of up to 10-ish% of the affordable housing development marketplace. We need to do lots of bidding. We bid 100 schemes a month. We've bid over, so in 9 months, we've bid just over 1,000 schemes. So it is a frictionless, paperless business. We have no paper. We have a photocopy. Well, we have a scanner. It gets used for scanning things. We do have a photocopier, but it doesn't really get used for photocopying. So people just get into the world of working in a virtual business where everything sits in the cloud. It's really quite interesting, you know. And I think we need to be agile, so we constantly have to design and improve and design and improve processes literally every day of the week. So everyone within the business takes a day every 2 weeks out of the business and does sort of agile working and sprints, and they design solutions. 80% is good enough. When you've designed a solution, you then test pilot, and then roll it out. And then we'll go with that until that issue moves to the top of the pile again, and we'll have a look at it in a few months' time. So it's really exciting. I think what's been amazing, though, is I think the ambition of the whole sector to do more. So we see ourselves as wanting to collaborate with the sector and help it support growth in whatever way we can do, as opposed to just saying, let's just go out there and compete in the marketplace and just deliver our own business plan, because there's lots of passion, there's lots of need, and anything we can do to provide a little bit of input to elevate that is good for society.
Fantastic, thank you. We had a great chat over lunch actually about, people know this, but we've got a lot of apprenticeship and skills building programs within the Combined Authority, and whether we could start to do swaps. In fact, Homes England have an increasing number of young people coming into the business. I'm sure the same is the case for all of the panellists. So there is a finite supply of talent as well, and it's about bringing talent on in our minds, and also ensuring that the kind of senior leaders sort of share their learning for the benefit of the sort of newcomers. So there's much more kind of engagement and transfer of knowledge, I guess. So with that in mind, I'll call you Professor Jackie, if that's all right, so we don't mix the Jackies up. Again, from your wearing your sort of two hats, both the LAP and the university context, what do you see in this arena of affordable housing? From your perspective, what are the biggest challenges? And also, where do you see the sort of priorities? How do we, knowing the challenges, how do we prioritise what we do?
Okay, so I think we talked this morning, some of the speakers spoke quite a bit about placemaking in the context of housing and regional economic development. I work at a university that has 22,000 students. Almost 80% of them come from within 25 miles within the region. Almost 80% of them, when they graduate with us, stay in that region to work. So the job of a university suddenly becomes as much about creating jobs for those graduates when they finish their degrees as it does about learning and education and qualifications. So that placemaking role for a university becomes very, very important and very acute in that region. We also talked this morning about, I think Wahid talked about inspiring young people. And what we're trying to do with all our partners on the Springfield campus in terms of that National Centre for Construction Development is to provide a whole ladder of skills opportunities for the construction industry right the way through. That starts off with a school, the West Midlands UTC, which teaches 14 to 19-year-olds construction education within a national curriculum framework, through apprenticeships, which is one of the fastest growing areas of construction education, into a new £50 million School of Architecture and Built Environment that we'll complete in May. So it's very much about how you inspire young people to work in the industry, and then, as colleagues were talking about earlier, how you then nurture that talent through into degree education, into CPD, into lifelong learning, so that you're constantly doing that. So I think it is about skills. I think that's really important, but also those practical applications of research and how we can support the industry to move forward.
Thank you. And then building on that, the Centre of Excellence at Wolverhampton University, is that the Built Environment Centre, or it goes beyond that? Is that more of the construction? Or do you see the two together?
So they go together. The National Centre for Construction Development will be a wider concept that we're working with the Combined Authority and the Council and the LEP and other partners on. And within that there are various elements right through from a school to a university faculty,
National Brownfield Institute, all bringing together that whole concept of how you bring skills and training and research together to work with the sector.
Fantastic, thank you. There seems to be so much in this region. I went to the MTC the other day, which many of you will know, in Coventry, the Manufacturing Technology Centre, which actually blew my mind in terms of kind of the next leap into robotics and so on, and how we went with George Clark and some of his folk in the Moby Institute. And it's fascinating to think about how robotics will come more and more into house building. So I'm hoping for some Slido questions. I'm hoping you're not all texting your mates. So if there are Slido questions, send them through. I think they'll appear on this screen, hopefully. I just want to take one more. Ben, if you could help us, again, in your LNG setup. MMC. MMC has been talked about since probably the modern movement. What does it mean now, and what does it mean within LNG?
Yeah, so I guess within LNG we have a modular factory. So we're one of those organisations that are trying really hard to take the concept and deploy it at scale efficiently and on a cost-effective basis, which works from when we think about cost-effective, we think about cost-effective from a construction and a total delivery, and then obviously a cost-in-use perspective. I guess in our programme of what we're delivering at the moment, I guess there's probably about between 7 and 9% of what we've got in our programme is some form of modular delivery. Some of it is with LNG Modular and some of it's with other providers. I think, do I think it's a feature of the marketplace? Absolutely. But the challenge for all of the organisations that are in that modular space is about getting throughput, and the only way organisations are going to get throughput is by deploying organisations, making commitments and buy into the longer term benefits. I think particularly, when we think about, so we think we're a commercial business with a social purpose, but then we have, but what are we going to, where do we want to maximise social impact? And I think one of our views from an LNG affordable homes perspective is we can do much more in the R&D space to be able to pilot and scale up and roll out. And that's where, modular is really, really interesting. How can we use modular to drive down the cost to a customer so that their cost of utilities, either including or excluding water, is, come up with numbers, but, less than £100 a year, because then that puts money in the pocket of the people, of people who are, on low incomes and living in, living in affordable homes. So I think it's just a long way to go, but it's not a cheap endeavour, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. It needs more organisations to be embracing modular and show it how it can work in practice.
Thank you very much. Joe, I'm going to take a Slido question and send it your way, if that's all right. And I think we can sort of broaden this out. It's the anonymous questioner. Should the Combined Authority have had more focus and ambition on climate change and net zero carbon? So this is kind of linking to the modernisation process, I guess, especially given that a month later we declared, or Birmingham declared, a climate emergency. So I guess your take on the role of the Combined Authority and the region, really, in its entirety, and how we address and step up to the climate challenge.
Okay, well, obviously, this is a really important topic, climate change, as you can see across the board, in the news always, in terms of a problem that needs to be resolved, and clearly we're seeing that across the globe, let alone here in the region. Well, as a civic leader, the Combined Authority that it is, clearly climate change is going to be one of those things that they need to look at, and therefore any resources they can apply to that, which is going to help us in our position. So obviously when we work with the likes of Homes England, we have subsidy available to deliver homes, and that's a finite level of subsidy which gives us the ability to deliver. Where there's opportunities for further gap funding from the Combined Authority to deliver on some of their own agenda, whether that is a definition of affordable housing, whether that is accelerated delivery, whether that is using modern methods of construction, or whether that's a rationale around inclusive growth, there will be inevitably opportunities to look at ways and means of being able to deliver on the sustainability agenda. So, of course, I do believe that as a civic leader, there's always opportunity to look at some of the key issues that need to be looked at in aggregate as opposed to individual local authority level.
Great, thank you. And Jackie, a sort of parallel question for you, sorry, Jackie J. Within Homes England, for a long time we've had the sort of design, quality, sustainability agenda. How are we working to drive more environmentally friendly housing, to ensure that as we do large-scale construction, we minimise the negative impacts?
So I think it all comes back to the two things, which is the design sustainability agenda and the MMC, actually, because I think through MMC you can achieve the same, and the design and quality benefits of MMC can all go into sort of getting that environmental efficiency, etc. So Homes England is looking at the sort of the construction productivity side of things, but also the design and sustainability. And we're very much looking to work with the sector across the range to get our land out with the MMC requirements. We're piloting sites going out to say there's a requirement for the MMC to get the sort of production order books filling out and making sure that there's that certainty over time of, for the factories to be built and actually get the production lines running. And I think that goes a long way to dealing with the climate change side of things. And Homes England is working with our land, but also we've got a recent deal with the Sekisui and a Japanese company looking to get sort of 2,000 homes in production per year over the coming time. And that's a fantastic sort of deal that we've done quite recently. I think on the design and quality, building things in is the right thing to do. Really looking to take those steps towards design and quality being a built-in solution, looking how we can influence within the whole sector, but also how we can set out what we're expecting. So we're on a journey. The national standards exist. We're working with those at the moment, but there's no doubt that we want to make sure that we're sort of helping lead the sector, make sure we get a good outcome on the design side too.
Brilliant, thank you. And I welcome questions from the floor too. This slide is a little quiet at the moment, so do you want to take a question? I'm hoping we've got a mic, a roving mic. I'll ask one more. I think you'll struggle to be heard at the back, so we'll get the mic to you. In the meantime, Professor Jackie, I had a question for you, and then we'll certainly come to your question. If you put your hand up, I'll take questions from the floor, because we're not getting a whole lot from Slido. Are we thinking big enough? This is a massive challenge. I think all the speakers have outlined that. Are we tackling this in the right way? Philosophically, are we embracing the challenge head on or not?
Well, I think the existence of a combined authority that brings together the three LEPs together has meant that we are in a better position to think in a bigger way and think more broadly about some of these things, and that's been helpful. So I think the ambition around construction, housing, and the whole kind of approach to that from the combined authority has begun to grow quite large. So I think the idea, of what I've talked about earlier, a national centre in Wolverhampton, in the West Midlands, that is not just about serving its region, but also about having that national and international reputation in terms of construction, the development of brownfield land and those things, I think is an example of where the combined authority and the LEPs have been able to say, there is a big regional potential here. So I think there are ambitions, and I think there are signs that we're starting to deliver on those ambitions. But of course, we've got a long way to go in terms of meeting some of those targets around housing in the Black Country. We've started to make some progress, but we have some way to go.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Joe, by all means, yeah.
I think the combined authority has certainly acted as a catalyst for housing associations in the region to come together and collaborate more. So one of the things which we're exploring with the combined authority is how do we collaborate in some form of venture to be able to deliver within the strategic economic corridors. So we all have our own business plans to deliver so many houses, and I talked about Midland Heart having 3,000. There will be other housing associations that will be delivering as well in their own regard. But actually, if we can create leverage from some of our balance sheets to be able to say, well, actually, if I put so much money in, everybody else puts so much money in, then we're in a position to have a loan to value with senior lending. We can then start to deliver additionality in some of those areas where the combined authority wants to see that level of growth. And I think, obviously, the key thing for us then is if we can then tap into resources made available through the housing delivery that they had with government, we not only can we start to create that level of additionality, but we can start to incubate some of the ideas around modern methods of construction, some of the ideas around accelerated delivery. Let's look at some of those design aspects that we're looking at, and therefore start to see what works, and therefore how we roll that out better.
Brilliant, thank you. Now I'd like to take the question from the gentleman at the front. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well.
Sure. Good afternoon, Giles Scott from Arcadis. A question for Ben, if I may. What's Ben's ideal deal? So how do we engage with the platform that's, you know, obviously a massive machine, conscious of your Carla Homes platform, and you'll be obviously, I guess, satisfying the 106 requirements they have. But beyond that, I mean, obviously, huge, you know, £1 trillion fund. I mean, how does the market engage with this new platform you have?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You know, our smallest scheme is I think 6 homes in North Devon on the side of the beach, and just next to a sheltered home scheme. And I think the biggest scheme is probably something with Carla, which is about 160 homes just outside Swindon. So there's almost, I guess we're in a really interesting position where you can say, look, if it works and it delivers affordable housing, that's great. So sorry, our starting point is what's a great deal. We go through, I think, 12 quality measures and say anything that doesn't meet 12 of those quality measures, sorry, it doesn't meet 11 of those 12 quality measures is something that we don't want to do. So, and that's all about the quality of the place, the quality of design, quality of place, and quality of experience for the customer. So everything starts with quality, and then after that, it depends what it might be. So it could be Barrett's that just wants to sell some Section 106 homes, and all they're interested in is who pays the most, to be frank. Or it could be we've got quite a. I think the interesting thing for me is of the 80 projects we've got at the moment, probably about 45% of them are with really small developers and contractors. So the ability to. We can't have everything with smaller developers and contractors because my funders will get a bit, you know, sort of hot-headed about how much risk with small organisations. But the ability to just think differently with some of those organisations. So organisations that want to grow, they might only have a limited amount of capital. They might want to do some open market housing next door. So can we just buy the land and enter into a relationship for them to draw down the land as they build the open market housing and build our affordable housing as well. So anything that we can do within a sort of managed risk framework to grow the sector, which, you know, some of that is to do with financing the growth of the sector, sort of sits within our agenda. So I think anything goes with partners that are aligned, that are passionate about place and partnership and delivering good quality customers.
So no bad ideas then, if you're happy to.
Yes, I mean we do have lots of ideas that come forward and we go, actually that's not quite for us right now. So on the other hand, we don't just do anything. But, yeah.
All right, well, we're into our last minute, so I have a final question for each of the panellists, and it's a one-word answer. So literally in a few seconds each, if there's one thing that you want to focus on in the year ahead, so that when we meet here in a year's time, what would the one thing be, Jackie Jacob?
Yeah. So really positive spending review, a 10-year settlement.
Fantastic. Long-term plans with the funding behind them. Ben?
It's collaboration with digital designers.
Fantastic. It's great to hear. Joe?
Political and economic certainty.
Ah, the Holy Grail.
I didn't say I was going to get it, but I just thought that's what I asked for.
All right, Jackie, help us from your intelligence standpoint.
About that, skills and talent.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.